Whew, I'm so sorry, everyone. I thought I was planning to have this stream at 5 p.m. GMT time, and I live in Stockholm. And I set the time for the stream on YouTube to be 5 p.m. instead of 7, which 5 p.m. GMT is for me. Whew, I just ran here from the closest McDonald's, and I'm so sorry. So yeah, today I wanted to talk to you about React Hook Form 7. Thank you, Mohammed. I see you here saying no problem. Well, yeah, there is some fault on me. Like I hate time zones. I wish we all had one time zone. It would be so much simpler. Whew. Hey, Alejandro. Nice to see you. Oh my God. Thank you so much for waiting for what was it? Like 44 minutes. Thank you so much. Let's talk about React Hook Form version 7. I'm going to open... I'm looking for an example to show you. So today, we're going to talk mostly about a few things. First of all, what is different in React Hook Form 7, which makes a lot of my videos obsolete. So I'm planning now to remake a lot of my videos because now you access the errors object a little bit differently. So error handling have changed. Another thing is that, actually, this is the main change, is that instead of passing the register as a ref property, you have to spread it because now register is a function, and when you call it, it returns you a field. And a field is a set of properties which is onBlur handler, onChange handler, name, and ref. But enough talking. Let's at least look at the documentation, and then we'll go on to the live coding. It's a bit overwhelming after running so much. And also, it's quite hot now in Stockholm. It's how people call it, good weather. To be honest, I frankly don't like this good weather. I prefer when it's cloudy and you don't have to like squinch your eyes like this to hide yourself from the sun. I don't really like this kind of weather. I would prefer it to be a little bit windy and cloudy. But React form.com. Let's share my screen. All right. Boom. So, API. First of all, yeah, we get the register. If we look at the docs, you see that register now is being called like this. You spread it and you pass the name in. But let's actually create a new project and start some live coding. CD, workspace. Oh, my workspace on my home machine is not capitalized. Workspace, npx, create, React app. I'm not going to use TypeScript today to not make things more complex than they should be, but maybe some other time we should actually have a React Hook Form TypeScript stream instead. npx, create React app, React Hook Form stream example. Quite a long name. While it's being generated, let's see. I probably got some comments. Oh my God. Thank you, Anastasia, for those 30 crowns. Yeah. Cool player. Thank you. Anastasia, thank you. Zurislav. Hey there. Alejandro asks, what do you think about the approach for this update? I didn't look into this, like how it's implemented. I think it sort of makes sense, probably. One case when it became really less comfortable, less convenient to use is, for example, with Material UI. Maybe I have an example opened right now. Maybe not. I'm trying to look for it. No, it's not here. Yeah, found it. I'm gonna open my code editor, share the screen again. And I'm gonna show what I mean by this. Where is my VS Code? All right. So I have an app. If you're my YouTube follower, you probably already saw this video where I show how to use React Hook Form, the older version that didn't require you to spread the register, with Material UI. And previously, it used to look like, let's cancel this. It used to look like this. So for example, you would use a component called text field to process the text inputs, and you would just pass the register as an input ref, because Material UI input components don't have ref being forwarded. They actually process the ref as a prop, unlike the regular React components, regular DOM. Do you call them DOM elements, like inputs and like the regular stuff? They treat it as something different from the props. So here, instead of ref, they have input ref that is being passed to the actual input component that they wrap. And it was quite simple. You specify the you probably have to specify the name, password, you pass in the input ref, and that was it. Now it looks like this. You see, I have to pass the input ref, the onChange, the onBlur, and the name. And to get all them, I have to do it in advance. I have to call the register and get all that, because I will need to have the ref separately. And if I have a bunch of styled components like this, styled text fields from Material UI, this can become quite cumbersome. One workaround that I imagine would work with this. I personally don't use Material UI much. I prefer to write my styles either myself or use some CSS framework. Even Bootstrap would work. You're still less constrained than with Material UI. But yeah, you will have to prepare this thing in advance. And the other option would be to create a wrapping component that would do it for you. So instead of creating a field instance that would contain the ref, the onChange, the onBlur, and the name, you would have it accept the register and do this magic. Let's see. Did I get more comments? Okay. Mr. Computer, please don't freeze. Zishan, at least a wait is over. Yes. And as I said, I'm sorry. My screw up, my mistake, accidentally mistaken the GMT time with Stockholm time. It happens sometime. No Discord voice chat today. Actually, why not? Let's try it. I'm going to jump to voice chat. There is Turing already there. Turing, hello, my friend. How are you doing? Oh, you have your hello. I don't know. Do other people hear you? People in the YouTube chat, please let us know if you hear Turing. Really glad to see you. I'm going to read the comments a little bit more, and then we will move on to actual live coding. So yes, there is a Discord voice chat today as well. If you're a member of my Discord server, you can jump on in and we can discuss with you through the voice communication, voice channel, and have some fun. So recently, cool player saying, recently migrated to version 6 to version 7 and found some off-breaking changes. Yes, and they're quite big, I would say. So for example, if you use Material UI and you saw what I was showing, then yeah, it can affect your workflow quite a lot. Another change that they introduced is handling errors, and that they are now contained inside of the form state object. But let's go to live coding. I can't wait anymore. All right, the app should be already created. Yeah, this is it. CD React Hook Forms stream example code. Let's install the React Hook Form library. Yarn add React Hook Form. All right. Installing. Okay, now we go to the app. I'm going to remove the tests right away. We won't need them, and I don't want to write tests today. Let's only focus on React Hook form. We're not going to need the logo and app CSS. Let's remove all the layout, and we'll start with a simple form. We'll have a form with two inputs, first name, last name. I have aphantasia, probably. It's hard to invent something witty here. We have a form that has two inputs. Input 1 and input 2. So now to use React Hook form, I'm gonna get the register. What? Keyboard, why are you not listening? Equals, use form. I don't need any extra options here. And now, instead of specifying the name separately and then passing the register as a ref, I'm gonna do this. Spread register. And I may give you an advice to, if you struggle to understand how does this thing work, to go and maybe visit the learn javascript.info website. It has a pretty good explanation of how does spread operator work. What we basically do here, we take the output of the register function and break it up into a bunch of members. We can see a little bit later in a few moments. We will log this register result to see how it looks like. Into what properties do we break it up? So the difference is that instead of specifying the name property separately and the ref separately, we specify the spread of the register function, and we specify the name as an argument to this function, actually the first argument. So first input is going to be first name, and the next one is going to be register, 3 dots, last name. Okay, this should be enough, but we also want to be able to log the result, the data from this form. So we also take the handle submit from the use form hook. Now we need to define our function on submit. It's going to receive the data. And the way it's going to get the data is because when we pass the on submit handler to our form, on submit equals, we will wrap our on submit function into handle submit provided by React Hook form. Handle submit. And we wrap our on submit into this thing. It should work. I want to log the data. All right, let's run the application. It should open in the browser. Localhost 3000. I probably have something else running. You might see a secret project I'm working on right now. Our team is working right now. Nope. Yep. If you want, we can talk about it a little bit in the end of the stream. Let's run it on another port. So it's a Blitz application. Have anyone heard about the Blitz framework? Write in the comments, or you can reply in the Discord. I see there are a bunch more people in the Discord voice chat. Have you folks heard about Blitz framework?
No. Is it for React?
Yeah, it's for React. It's actually quite interesting idea. Blitz.js.
Is it like Razzle or something like this?
You probably can say it's like Razzle, but it's way more high level. It's actually it's built upon Next.js. So Razzle is very, very minimalistic. Oh. Yeah, you can imagine the difference, right, between Razzle and this thing. Have you heard about Rails or worked with it?
Oh, no, I never worked with Rails.
So Rails provides you with a bunch of tools, everything you need to actually build a web application. It provides you with a database interface. It provides you with the tools to operate your database, like migrate, seed the data, apply like fixture data to it, and other stuff to manage your database. So what Blitz.js is, it's a mix, it's a combination between Next.js and Prisma. Have you heard about Prisma?
I think it's something like Remix, yes?
Remix? I haven't heard about Remix. Is it Remix.js?
Oh, Remix.run is the best current, I think, framework for React.
Oh, that's...
Yeah, better than Next.js. And
explore features.
I never use it because it's, it's kind of, you need to buy the license, but I watched 3 or 4 hours of content about Remix.
Ooh.
It's so good.
All right, you know what? I'm gonna edit. How do I edit to the reading list? Okay, I will just keep this tab open.
The creator of this is Ryan Florence and Michael Jackson.
Ah, those are quite famous.
Yeah, they are React Hook Form and the other Rich UI.
I remember Ryan Florence, Rich,
and React Router DOM.
I think Reach Router, no?
No, not Reach Router. React Router DOM, and the Michael Jackson build React Router DOM, and the Ryan Florence build Rich UI.
I remember. I don't know the Reach UI. I remember there was Reach Router. I think also by Ryan Florence.
Yeah, there was Reach Router. Reach UI was, the most accessible UI element kit, kind of.
That's super interesting. Thanks for this suggestion. I'm going to explore this thing. Definitely sounds very, very interesting.
I see the API of Blitz. Now I'm reading about it. It's kind of similar to Remix. The idea of all of the streams about Remix are using the same Prisma V2, in fact.
All right, let's get back on track. I would actually like to discuss random things in the end of the stream, if you don't mind. I think we have a bunch of interesting topics. I would like to talk about something not related to specifically web development. I would like to share one article that I found about like Linux, about file permissions, because you know that file. Okay, let's talk about it later. Now let's focus on React Hook Form. So I had an error because I forgot to import useForm. Import useForm. Now it should be good. So we have 2 inputs. I'm gonna open the console, and if I enter Maxim and then here Ivanov, pretty basic stuff. I press enter. Oh, I forgot to add a button, of course. Button. Submit. Okay, let's format the document. Go back. Submit. And we have first name, last name, Maxim Ivanov. Next thing that we want to do with this form, first difference between 6 and 7 we've just discussed, that now instead of passing the register to the ref and name to the name property, you just pass them on all together. And I promised to show you how does the output of the register function look like. We can actually do it right here. When the component will render, it will log the output of the register function. Console log. And then here we call register. And let's call it some field, whatever. And let's open the browser. Now this object was logged, and this is the field. I'm now calling this object like this. I will show you in a moment why. It has name. This is why we don't need to pass in the name prop anymore. It has onBlur and onChange. I don't know why did they decide to actually pass them in like this. It actually created another problem with normalizing the form fields. Maybe you remember my video about form field normalization, where I was showing how to normalize the credit card number value, where you have to break the long number numeric sequence into 4 chunks of 4 numbers. It is a bit harder now because now you cannot use the set value there. Instead, you actually have to modify mutate the event. But yeah, this is how the output looks like. And why am I calling it field is that somewhere in the docs, I think it's, let me find it. I think it's either useController that is returning a field. Yeah, exactly. So one of the returned values from the useController that we will use in a few minutes, they call this object name field. And if you look at the properties that it has, it's quite similar to what we see as a result of the register function. So it's my initiative, but I like to call this thing a field that has name. It doesn't have the value here, but yeah, whatever. A little bit of impreciseness in my language. But yeah, now let's talk about validations. And I'm gonna get back to the chat for a few seconds. Yo, are you Swedish? No, I'm not Swedish. I'm Russian, but I live in Sweden for 3 years. I live in Stockholm. So yeah, not Swedish. What's going on here? We are exploring what are the differences between the old version of React Hook Form, I mean version 6, and the new version, which is version 7. I was showing what is the first difference is that instead of passing the register as a ref, we now call it and spread that. Now it's a function, and we need to call it, pass in the name of the field, and then spread it to pass the result of this execution of this function, the return value of this function, as a series of props to your component. Next thing that I want to discuss is going to be error handling. And after we discuss error handling, I want to try to implement something a little bit more complex where we will have dependent fields. So let's say we will have one input that will contain the base value, like default value, and then we'll have 2 more fields that will be able to copy this value from that default field. I don't know if what I'm saying now makes sense and you understand what I mean, but I will show you the example and show you how can you achieve it. I think it's one of the things that people often find hard to implement. So I think it's going to be useful. Maybe not now, maybe later it's going to be useful. But now let's get back to the error handling. So, and by error handling, I mean the validations. So first way, the easiest way to validate your inputs is to pass in the options object as a second argument to the register. One thing that I like about modern JavaScript and modern development IDEs is that you can look up the types for the code that is JavaScript, but as React Hook Form was originally written in TypeScript, you still have access to those to this information. You can see what kind of values does this function accept. So you can see that the first argument of the register function is actually a string. Here it already typed it a little bit more strictly. So now it's not just a string, but it's a first name string. And then we have the options object. That is optional. We could skip sending it completely. But as we're going to play with validations, we're going to populate it with some values. So here you can see that it has a bunch of rules that it can validate. There are only a few. There are a bunch more that are available to you. First one is required. So you can make some field required, and if it's empty, then your form wouldn't be submitted. And here is something interesting. I thought that required is a Boolean flag, which kind of, well, it sounds logical, right? That is it required? Yes, no, true, false, Boolean. But looking at the types, you see that it's a string or a validation rule. And we'll get to the validation rule a bit later. But what does it mean that it's a string? I think it's quite easy to guess what it does. And what it actually does, it provides the name, the custom value for the message that the React Hook form will throw. Let's try it out. Let's say first name is required. Oh, no, this is not how you do it. You pass in the options object with the required field that has the string value. First name is a required field. This is how you do it. And let's format the document. Let's go back to the code. On submit is not defined. What? Oi, I forgot. Accidentally removed the onSubmit function. OnSubmit equals data. And here we console log data. All should be good now. Okay, let's clear up the console log and try to skip the first name, because you see it's now required. And we'll only fill in the second one. Something, submit. We get an error, but we don't show the error anywhere. So how do we get access to this error to show it in the interface? One of the ways to do it, actually the only way to do it, is to reach out for the errors object. Previously, you could access it like this. Errors, boom, you have it. Now you can access the specific error for a specific field, just saying, let's say, curly brackets, errors, and errors. No, actually, we can use optional chaining. Errors first, name and end, and then we show, for example, a paragraph or whatever layout element that you use to show the validation errors. Here we specify the errors, first name, message. This was how it used to work before. Now errors is not available as a top level member of the return the values from the use form hook. Instead, you use the form state, I guess. Form state, and here you get the errors, right? Yes, it's form state, and then errors is actually errors. What I did right now, I just checked the types. So if this field wouldn't exist, so for example, I say foo, and then I check the type of it, it says any, and then I'm like, okay, then probably this is the wrong name, and it is not returned from use form, you know? So we have the errors object, and actually I already wrote the code that would show the error for us. We can go back to the browser, try to submit the form, and we have the error message here. All right. I guess we can take a few moments and look at the comments. Okay, we have Roman React form. Hi, Ruski Человек. Hi, DS. Sonu Sharma, React Formic library is great. I don't argue with that. Formic is also a great library. I prefer to pick one tool that I like and work with it. I don't really like jumping between different tools. I have a video where I compare Formic and the React Hook form. I think those are both great libraries. The library that I really don't like is Final Form, because what is good about both Formic and React Hook form? They keep simple things simple. Complex things might still be hard to implement, but at least the basic things are still simple. I really appreciate that. Is Formic better than React Hook form? Is React Hook form better than Formic? I don't know. I think they're quite on par. They're both great libraries, and I think it matters. What matters kind of more is what do you feel more confident with? So which tool do you know better? I know React Hook form much better than Formic, so I would stick to it. If I would be working with a team that works with Formic, then yeah, I would have some motivation to learn more about Formic. All right. Hi, your videos really helped me. Really glad to hear that. What about making a very, very complicated form via React Hook form, but using TypeScript? Because nobody used JavaScript in Serious Project. I think maybe a few people here in the chat will argue with you that people still use JavaScript with big projects. I'm not going to argue with you. I think TypeScript is very beneficial on big projects. I have a lot of experience with big projects and TypeScript because it helped. Did I just mistakenly say that JavaScript helps you with big projects? Actually, no. I actually believe in the opposite, that JavaScript can hinder your performance. I mean, developer performance, not the code performance on big projects. And I would always prefer TypeScript. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Maybe it will be some other stream. You can join my Discord server if you're not there yet. And we can shoot some ideas what should be in that complex form. Because you say, very, very complicated form, what should it contain? You know, I have the Ultimate React Hook Form Challenge, which contains a bunch of things that I came up with, which I thought are kind of might be complex to implement. Today I'm going to show you another thing that is probably complex to implement, but there are a lot more things that are hard to implement. So I would really appreciate some ideas on what should be included into that form. Okay, my computer is really struggling right now. Sorry for a little bit of delay. Okay, I'm afraid it's not going to be just a little bit. Oh, sorry, who's saying what? Okay, and it stopped with freezing. Usually when developers face tasks with forms, they use TypeScript, React Hook form, and UP. Yeah, that's a good option. We can start with that. Thank you for your videos. I love how brief but complete they are. Thank you for this comment. These kind of supportive comments, they're very valuable, because sometimes you're tired and you see some mean comment on YouTube and then you question, like, should I continue? Nah, this kind of sucks. Nah. But then I have a lot of good comments, and this helps me continue my making the videos. I'm not sharing anything right now. I'm gonna finish reading the comments that I have right now and then go back to the code. So few moments and we'll get back to the live coding. Can I use UP? Yes, you can use UP, and actually a bunch more libraries like Z, and I think they have a list in the documentation of the validation libraries that React Hook Form supports. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I love TS, but my boss forces me to use JS in serious projects. This happens sometimes. Yep. We can slowly talk our bosses into using TypeScript. Someday they will give up. What do you think about Babel plugin GS6 Control Statements? Have no idea what is that. Cannot give any comments. Maybe I will look it up later. Or maybe you can clarify it a little bit in the comments what it does, and we can discuss it after I show a bunch more code. OMG, why? OMG, why what? Why what, Alejandro? About the TypeScript thing. Yeah, probably. Like he did the ultimate form like this, but whole project should be based on TS, not JS. I would say JS is for boys, TS is for men. And the girls and women and whatever non-binary people, and yes, probably. I would agree that TS, I like TS. TS for the win. Yeah, I also like Minecraft swag. Okay, let's go. Enough chit chat. Let's talk about error handling. So now errors object is inside the form state. I have no idea why did they decide to do this. Maybe it's to have some more uniform API. Probably. Now you just need to remember that errors object is not accessible directly. It's accessible through another level. What we're talking about is that the required field, except the string, actually it will work if you pass in the Boolean. Of course, if you don't use the TypeScript, because TypeScript will actually say, whoa, what are you doing? This field actually accepts the string, but with JavaScript we can do it like this. True, but the problem then is going to be that if we reload the page, I'm going to clear the console. We skip the first name, press submit, and I don't have the value, I don't have the message for this field. So it's better to pass in the string. Another option is to pass in the validation rule, I guess. Yeah, the validation rule thing. And what validation rule is, it's an object with two fields. It's a standard object. It always has those two fields. First one is the value. And here it's true. And second one, is the message. So the message is used when the validation fails, and it's used to tell the user what went wrong. So for example, here, instead of passing in the string, we can pass in the validation rule object that will contain the value, true, required, and the message. This field is required. Watch out exclamation mark. Okay. Format the document. Let's go back to the browser, submit the form. This field is required. Watch out. This also works. Now I would like to start showing the more complex example, I guess. Or do you want to talk about validation rules provided by Yoop? I don't think it's something interesting, to be honest. I have an example of this somewhere. It didn't change much. Like the reason why I don't want to talk about it right now is that it's the same as it was before. You can watch any of my videos. I think I actually have a video about form validation using Yoop. Same thing. Didn't change. Here's the Yoop example. To not leave you with nothing, and I'm still going to show you how it works with Yoop. So we can specify the validation rules inline, right, in the form. But as you can imagine, at some point, where is it? At some point, this kind of thing inside of your layout can become quite cumbersome to support. It already became kind of much harder to read. Instead of just having two inputs, which was simple and very clear and very, how do you call it? Eloquent and easy to read. Now it is this mess with a bunch of logic and messages, and you have to make some effort to understand what's going on here. So to separate those concerns, showing the errors and displaying the inputs and processing the user input and validating it, we can split it into a validation schema. Let's go back here. You define an object using the Yoop library. As I said, you can use, it's not the only library that is supported by React Hook Form. You can also use Z, or let's open the docs. I think would be get started integrating validation. Schema validation, yeah. Yoop Zod, not Z. Zod superstruct YOI. It supports 4. I actually had to count. Yoop Zod superstruct YOI. Yes, it supports 4 different libraries to validate. I believe that all of them sort of follow similar pattern, that you specify the form of the object that you expect to get from the form. Because what the form does, it receives an object with values. This is how I usually try to think about my form, and this is what I limit them to. So I don't want my form to send data to the backend. Even if the data will eventually be sent to the backend, it usually won't happen inside the form. I will usually try to stick to the basic functionality. So my forms usually collect the data and then call some sort of callback that I will pass as a prop to them. Then I will take this data and do whatever I need, but the form has no idea what will happen with the data after it was received from the user. So let's get back on track. I think I'm drilling a little bit too much, maybe not. So if you have Yoop, you specify the schema object using the syntax that is a bit similar, at least it reminds me of the prop types library. Maybe you remember that, when we didn't have TypeScript and we had to specify the types of the props that our components did receive using the prop types. You specify the types of the fields that you have there, and you can specify the messages, the error messages for each of the validations in line. So for example, if the number that we pass in at the age is not positive, so it's negative, you will get this error. Oh, actually, it's in Russian. Yeah, this is in Russian because those examples are from my Russian React course. So don't get too surprised that they have some Russian text here. Send me a thumbs up, those who can read this text, those who know Russian. But what it says here is that the field age should contain only positive values. And then you check that it's an integer and you specify that it's required. And required also, like it has a standard syntax that all the validation functions here receive the validation message. What you do next is you pass in the options object to the useForm hook. So in our example, which was much more simple, we didn't send anything as an argument to the useForm, but you can send a bunch of options to it. So for example, you can change the default behavior of when should the form validate the inputs. So for example, instead of validating it on submit, which is the default behavior, you could also validate it on blur. So when you unfocus the input, I think it's mode. Is it mode? Yes. And it's on blur. If you go back to the example application, and then we reload the page, and then I click this thing, I focus the input, and then I blur the input, boom, this is when the validation will fire now. Another thing, in this options object, you can send a bunch more things like I do here, and one of them is the resolver. So when you use Zod or Yoi or Superstruct or Yup like I do here, you need to use a resolver. And it needs to be installed separately. It's from the package hook form resolvers. It's installed here. Where is it? Hook form resolvers. Yeah. And it contains a bunch of supported resolvers. Like I said, Zod, Joy, Superstruct, and Yup. And then you pass in the schema that you've defined previously to your resolver. Now we don't have to specify any validation rules in the inputs because the form will already know that this is the structure that we expect. If the values that we got from the inputs, it doesn't match with the specified shape, you will get the errors. All right, let's read some comments. Okay, if you see that I'm not sharing my screen, that means that we're in the comment reading mode, and I will try to be sort of quick so we don't spend too much chatting or too much live coding. Let's go. To make it simpler, I use if condition true, high, if instead of true. That's interesting. I don't see how it's simpler, to be honest, but I see that there can be aesthetic preference. I actually never tried this, and I didn't know that there is the if element. Are you sure that React supports it? I know that I think Solid supports it. I'm not sure about React. I actually want to try. Let's try this. So we have this condition here. We can have the if. I forgot the syntax. What is the syntax of this thing? If condition true, then da. Okay. So it's not self-closing element, if, and then condition equals errors. I think we need to cast it to Boolean, or at least I would feel safer casting it to Boolean. Some people think that it's quite hacky. In my opinion, when you get used to this double thing, it's quite clear that what I'm doing here is I'm casting it to Boolean. I don't know. Some people might not like it. Error first, name, and then we render errors, name, message. Is it a valid syntax? I doubt it. I think it's gonna break. Okay, no, it broke for another reason. I think it broke because this happened. I'm gonna just put a bunch of optional chaining operators. So in case of any of those things like errors object or errors first name object wouldn't exist or be undefined, I will just get undefined instead of trying to access the field of the non-existent object. Wait, what? What? Wait, what? How? Since when? How, like, how did I miss it? Hey.
Are you talking to yourself? I just joined.
No, I'm not talking to myself. Do you see my screen? I'm sharing the screen.
Actually, yeah, I just joined, but I turn off your stream because maybe you have input lags. I expected what you going to share in Discord your.
Sorry, my computer today is very laggy. I don't think I'm gonna share in Discord.
Okay.
Okay.
Isn't if a reserved port?
So, okay, do you understand how it works? I had no idea it's possible. What? My mind is blown. Okay, who is also confused and surprised? Send a thumbs up to the chat.
As I told you, I just joined, so you have difficulties with required visualization or what?
No. Look at my screen, line 26. This is where my cursor is blinking.
Is the custom component or just?
It's not custom. It's something that I'm using in the just bare bones, like create React app application. I'm using if condition, and then inside of the if block, I have the error message value.
I think if you replace anything instead of if, it should work. Because I don't think it's a
Maybe I'm. Do you mean?
Show where from you're importing this if?
I'm not importing it. I'm not importing it anywhere.
It's not importing from any. Replace if with everything you want.
Replace it with what? Like this?
Replace if with if else or something.
Let's replace it with foo. Maybe I'm just delusional here, and this is how it would work, because it's very easy to get confused. Like, another experiment. Also, like, let's have two experiments at once. Below this button, I'm gonna have another if. Yeah, probably it's gonna just be the if element inside the HTML. That's, yeah, probably. So if condition equals false, this does not exist in React, and a few exclamation marks. Yeah, this doesn't exist in React. Yeah, nah, okay. Yeah, it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as if element in React. Or you should create a custom component. I was somehow hoping that maybe I missed something and there is some magic.
No, it's any component with that name will do.
Okay, that's quite boring.
Why don't you want to use just conditional rendering?
No, I was using conditional rendering. I just got a comment on YouTube that someone is using... okay, guys, it's possible with Babel plugin GS6 Control Statements and Reactive. Funny Family was sending it before. Yeah, thank you, Funny Family. Babel plugin GS6 Control Statements. Okay, and actually I asked for an example and you gave me an example. Oh my God, my computer is so slow. Babel plugin GS6 Control Statements. npm. Yeah, it allows you to use a bunch of elements in your code, like if condition. Yeah, okay, I see. Well, I think it's kind of cool, probably. I don't mind regular JavaScript code in curly braces, but I see why some people might prefer this. sort of syntax. And I think solid JS actually has this kind of elements, the conditional elements by default. Maybe I'm just making things up. Yeah, and it transforms it into regular ternary operator. Okay, cool, good to know. Thank you. Yeah, so yeah, it's just a package. Cool, we've learned something outside of React Hook form topic today. But let's go back to the code. What were we discussing? Yeah, we were discussing the validators. I wouldn't like to continue talking about it just because it didn't change much. Like, it was like this in React Hook form 6. It is like that in React Hook form 7. The syntax didn't change. It's all the same. You can watch my video about using validators. Same thing. But there is one thing that I'd like to discuss, and it is writing the dependent fields. I will try to find an example first and show you what do I mean, and then we'll try to re-implement it. And then we will be able to talk about useValue and useController hooks. That's interesting. And we'll actually find out what is the difference between useController and the controller object, or at least how I understand the difference between them. And I mean, when should you use a controller object or component, and when should you use the useController, the hook? Okay, we don't want to save it. No, it's not here. No. Okay, I think I need to stop my Docker. It's probably eating a bunch of resources as well. Okay, I will have to implement everything from scratch completely and explain what am I gonna do. Let's scrape everything that we wrote before. We don't need to change the form to the mode of the form to on blur. I'm gonna implement a form where we'll have the input that will have the default value, and we'll have two inputs that will be able to copy the values to it. Let's say we're going to implement an advertisement campaign planning form that will allow you to start campaign on Facebook, on YouTube, and maybe you want to have the default name for this campaign that you will be able to copy to the inputs for YouTube and Facebook separately. So we don't need to handle the errors. And I'm going to remove that input as well. Let's say we have the input that has name, default, title. It's going to contain the default title of your campaign that you should be able to copy to other inputs. Next, you have a. I'm going to use horizontal divider between the inputs, just for the sake of brevity and to keep things simple. And then we want to have inputs. One that is Facebook title, and another one that is. We should not forget to close those inputs for YouTube title. And I want to have a button to the right of this input that will copy the value from the default input. So let's create another component, new file. I don't know how to call it. Let's call it, the name probably is going to be bad. Don't nitpick. Let's call it, how do I call this input? Text input, the input with like populatable input. dot GS6. Export const populatable input equals a new component. And what it will do, it will return a regular input. And for sure, we will want to be able to pass the rest of the props to this input. But we also want to be able to pass. I wanted to have a label as well. So let's say it's going to have a label. I want this thing to be able to call set value, because I'm going to have a label and a button here. So I'm going to wrap everything into a fragment. And the button is going to say copy from default. You saw the default input here. We have default title that we will fill in, like campaign is going to be, for example, I don't know, League of Legends Championship promotion. And then on Facebook title, we want to copy it and maybe append some additional ID. That's the idea. So here we're going to have another button that will say copy from default. Oh, I have a bunch of syntax errors. What is wrong? Yeah, the button was closed improperly. So we'll need the function set value that we, as far as I know, we cannot get it anyhow except from the use form hook. Let's open the documentation just to make sure. I'm pretty confident that if we take the use form register set values, yeah, I don't see anything else that would be able to return set values. This is the props, returns the field state, form state. No, it's only the use form that will allow us to use the set value function. So set value function is a function that allows you to manually, at any point of your code execution, when you call it, to specify the value of the field in your form state. And we will need it, because when you copy the value from one field to another, this is exactly what you do. You specify the value of one of the fields manually. Here we will need to copy the value from somewhere. So here on click, handle copy. Let's define this callback. HandleCopy is a function where we will want to set value. We know the value, the name of the value, because we will use the name from the prop. So when we use this populatable input, we will pass the name as a prop. So we can pass it to the set value function. Set value name, and then we set value. As we're going to copy it from the default field, I can say that we're going to have the default value, and we'll need to get the default value somehow. I will write a comment for now. We'll get it a bit later. For now, we will just agree that, well, as only the use form hook returns the set value function that we obviously need in this component, we will probably need to receive it through the props. Set value, and we'll need to pass it to our component. Next, we'll also need to get the default value somehow. And to get the default value, we can use the hook useWatch. So when you use React hook form, you can also watch the values. And the most basic way to do it is to use the watch function that is returned from the use form hook. You do it like this. App. use. Oh, no. Watch. Just the watch. Use watch is a hook. Watch is a function that is returned from the use form hook. And then you say const. Let's say we want to watch for the default title. Const default title value equals watch. And then you pass either a string or an array of strings to get all the values. Here we want to watch only one value. So we specify the default title. Right now, it's not going to work because we didn't use the register. Let's fix it. So now instead of passing the name, we pass in the spread register, where we pass the name as the function, the first argument of the register function. Okay, and let's log the default title value. I'm just demonstrating how the watch function works. I'm doing it because later I'm going to use the useWatch that works similarly, but as it's a hook, you can use it anywhere inside of your form inputs, for example. Watch colon default title value. Let's go back to the code, to the browser. So watch is nothing, of course, because the field is empty. If I start entering some numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you get it gets updated every time the value changes, and the value changes every time the value of the input changes. Quite predictable, I would say. Quite expected. Hello from India. Hello from Sweden, and well, from Russia, where I'm originally from. Have anyone tried Redux Toolkit query? No, I haven't tried. Maybe someone else did. Why don't you use field Redux form? Oh, I don't like Redux form. And actually, even Redux, as far as I remember, I've heard a podcast where current maintainer of Redux said that using Redux to keep to manage the form state is not a good idea. How long has it streaming? I think I've worked a little bit with the dates and times and time zones, got confused, and accidentally started it 2 hours late. 1 hour, no, 40 minutes, 45 minutes later than it was supposed to, than it was planned. But actually, that was due to me originally planning to host this stream at 5 p.m. GMT. And I live in Central European time. So instead of creating a stream at 7 p.m., I created it at 5, thinking that I'm somehow living the GMT time zone. So it's running for 1 hour. If possible, please make a video on how to use UP with controller and material UI. I don't see what, like, there is nothing interesting happening with both things at once, in my opinion. If there is something peculiar about it, please let me know. What do you think is complex? Because I think I have a video on how to use UP, and I have a video about how to use material UI. What is missing? Why do you want two things at once? Because usually if you know how to do one thing and it's not affecting the other, it shouldn't be a problem to combine them. Maybe there is something. I don't know. Okay, enough comments. Let's go back to the code. So I've just shown you how to watch the values. Now we're going to use the useWatch hook to get the value of the default title. And here we're being a little bit, how to call it? We're cutting the corners a little bit. So I'm going to hard code, create a hard dependency of my Facebook title or whatever populatable input field to the default title. But just remember that in real project, it probably would be configurable. Doesn't matter that much here. I'm just showing you the principle of how the thing will work. So we get the default value from the default title field by using useWatch, and then we need to pass in the control. As far as I remember, if we open up the documentation and look at the useWatch hook, it needs three things. It needs the name of the value of the field that we are going to be watching. It needs the control to link this thing to the form. So control is an object that allows you to link your hooks to the form you're using. And the default value, well, in our case, we will just have it as an empty string. So name, control, and default value, that's what we want to specify. So we pass in an object with name equals default title. We pass in another field called control. And we'll need to get this control from the props as well. Control. And default value is going to be an empty string. So now when we handle copy, click the copy from default, we're going to call the handle copy function that will call the set value that we get from the props. And it's going to call get the value from, no, we already have the default value that we get using the useWatch hook. And it's going to just assign it to the value of the current populatable input. I think this input is already done. No, it's not. What I forgot is that I need to make this input editable as well. How do I do this? If one option to accept the register prop, but I don't think it's idiomatic to React hook form, and with these kind of components, we're supposed to use the control prop. So instead of passing in the register, we're going to pass the control, and then we're going to use it with the useController hook. Let's see how it works. useController is a custom hook that works like controller. It will return the field that we discussed in the beginning of the stream, that the field object is kind of similar to the result of calling the register. So what do we need to pass in? We need to pass in the name, and we need to pass in the control, and maybe the default value. So const field equals useController. And here we need to pass in the control. We get it from the props anyway, and we use it inside of the useWatch hook anyway, so we can pass it here as well. We need to pass in the name. It's going to be the name of this field. And default value, I think let's use the empty string. And now we are gonna spread the field. Oh, and label, I already defined the prop label, so I'm gonna just render it here. I think that is it. We can now use it in our app and see if it will work. So instead of input Facebook title, we're gonna use populatable input. We need to pass in the control that we get from the use form. Is it correct? Yeah, it's control that controls the field values. Control equals control. We need to pass in the name, and the name is going to be Facebook title. And we need to pass in the set value, and the set value we're also going to get from the use form. I don't think we need the watch function anymore because I've just demonstrated how it works, so we can safely remove it. The set value. Are we missing something? Control, name, set value, what else? Label. Name, set value, control, and maybe other props, but we need label. And label is going to be Facebook title, maybe with a colon. Okay, let's see if it works, if it even compiles. Populatable input is not defined. Of course, I forgot to import it. I don't know, why doesn't my VS Code import it automatically? Being VS Code would definitely import it automatically. Populatable input from populatable input, right? Should work now. The useWatch is not defined now, of course. Let's go to the input and import useWatch and useController. Input, import, useWatch, useController from React hook form. Let's format the document. Let's go back to the browser. Please work. Yes, it works now. Looks ugly. What can we do with it? And I think I have a bunch of extra fields. Why? Because I forgot to remove them. I don't need this Facebook title input anymore. We are going to use the glorious, magnificent, populatable input instead of the regular one. And we can do the same for the YouTube title as well. We're just going to change the name to the YouTube title. And this is going to say YouTube title. And I'm going to wrap this input into the label as well. Like this. Okay. Okay, now it's a little bit more clear how it's supposed to work. Let's add another separator divider, horizontal line, so that the submit button is on the bottom. I don't want to mess with styles today, so we're working with just bare HTML. Clear the console. Everything seems to be fine. I expect that when I enter the default value, the default campaign name, when I click the copy from default, it should populate it. It didn't. Why? Because I forgot to prevent the default behavior of the button. Actually, when I was streaming the same thing before, I already did it in Russian on my other channel. It already happened. I forgot that when you have a bunch of buttons inside of the form, it can actually get confused and think that all of them should act as submit buttons. The way you prevent it is you get the event object and you call event prevent default. You get back. We copy from default. Okay, that's interesting. It still doesn't work. Okay, before I fix it, I want to check if I got a bunch more comments. Please answer my question is above. Funny family, where the... Okay, also, I have a strange question. Have you ever tried to separate GS6 to another file because it is much better to keep view and component logic separate like in Vue and Angular? No, in React I don't do this, and in React component, at least how I treat components, as mostly I don't even split them into presentational and container components, while some people do. And I can do it sometimes as well, when, for example, one component mostly contains GS6 and another component contains more of the business logic. Nowadays with hooks, it's this pattern, I think, will become, or even already became, a little bit less popular, because you can already abstract business logic that is complex to the custom hook. And it actually makes sense in a lot of cases. For example, when you write context that has complex business logic, it's better to separate it to a custom hook because it will be easier to test. So yeah, no, I don't do this. Usually I treat components as self-containing piece of UI with some logic associated with it. So my components usually contain state that is relevant for their UI state. Maybe they use some custom hooks to get configuration. That's actually quite convenient to make your apps configurable and have some context that will actually load the configuration from the window object. At least that's what we do in Mojang with our web projects, and it's quite convenient. You can configure your app and then you can use it a little bit differently in different projects. Nice thing to do. And what else would my component have? Yeah, usually it would have both. A little bit of UI logic, a little bit of JSX, and most of my logic I would try to put into custom hooks. That's what I would do. So now that I have thought about it a little bit more while I was speaking, is mostly my components contain the UI state that is relevant for them specifically, and they contain the event handlers. And then inside of those event handlers, I call the functions that I get from the hooks that abstract the business logic for me. This is how I usually approach React components. Like, this is the typical responsibilities of my React components. I hope this was clear. I don't know, maybe it's better to show, but I just don't have any good example to show this. MobX with React hooks form logical? I would say no. MobX used to do what React hooks do now. It allowed you to have it allowed you to have an observable and how is it called? Observable and computed. It allowed you to have effectful computed, so you could run some side effects when the value is being changed, or it allowed you to have regular computed when some value depends on another value. Now it's not needed. React hooks are the same pattern as MobX provided you before. So, as I think, there is no need to use MobX anymore, especially after the hook that it provides you to use with React hooks is quite clunky. It's so usually when you use hooks, if you look at React hook form, the typical way is that you call them in the beginning of your component and you get some values from them and you pass some options to them. Quite logical. With MobX use render, I think it's called use render. You have, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry, let me share my screen. So with regular hooks, with normal ones, when you use, for example, use watch or use controller, I'm using React hook form hooks as an example, but whatever. This is the typical pattern of using hooks. They return some value or a bunch of values, maybe as an array, maybe as an object, whatever. It's all quite similar. And then you use them below. Like in the top of your component, you will call a bunch of hooks, get the values from them, and those values will be observable. This is how it works. With MobX, I really don't like this thing that they have, the use render, that you have to call in the bottom of your component, wrapping your layout. It breaks the whole pattern of using hooks. And immediately after trying it, like first thing, like hooks were released, I was still using MobX. I tried to use MobX with hooks. I didn't like it. I removed MobX and started using hooks on their own. They're a very good primitive. So I would think about hooks as similarly to what components and GS6 are to building. Okay, let me collect my words. So we can use GS6 and components syntax to build UI trees, the trees of UI, to represent your applications as trees of visual component elements, right? Makes sense. So with hooks, it's the same, but for data and effects. You can have observables like state, the root level observables that are not computed. They just have to be stored there. And then you can build trees of things that depend on them. Something very, very similar, but on a different dimension. Components for UI trees, hooks for data processing trees. I don't think we need any other libraries right now, to be honest. I think this API is very versatile, very expressive, and kind of nice to reason about. I really like it now. When hooks were just released, I didn't like them. Now I like them a lot, to be honest. Sir, can you decrypt a script? I have no idea. What are you asking for? Sorry. Can you decrypt my script? No, I failed to comprehend. I'm very sorry. Flatline, you're answering the MobX with React. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's about the MobX. Yeah, I had a longer rant about it. Okay, my computer is slow again. We all have to wait now until it's not slow anymore. Oh, Slider, hi from Finland. Hi from Sweden and I guess Russia. Maxim, I'm always getting validation error on date field with React Hook form. Would you be able to check it out? I've sent you a code sandbox. I guess so, maybe, if my computer will stop glitching as it does now. Okay, I think it stopped. Okay, let's. I'm gonna try to take a look at the Discord. General or help. Lucas, where did you send it to me? I've sent you a code sandbox. Is it in Discord? If it is, I unfortunately cannot find your message. Maybe let's talk about it some other time. General. Okay, I'm in general. The last messages that I see in general in Discord is me saying wrong time, OMG. Ah, wait, I'm at work, so sure. Will you please look at example? Basically, the validation of the date field is not working. Okay, yes, I see it now. Let's try it out. I hope my computer will manage it. Why is it so slow? What is running? I'm gonna stop Telegram. I'm gonna stop the notes. Oh, actually, they had to be force quitted. Maybe it's gonna be a little bit faster now. Am I sharing the screen? I think I'm not. Okay, let's try to stream Suspicious Snow. And as you can see, it fails to load. It's quite annoying to buy a MacBook and then in a year or two, it becomes extremely slow. Maybe I'm bad at managing my machines, very likely. Or they're supposed to be bought frequently nowadays. Or the web is bloated and we should just stop using so much JavaScript. Okay.
Maybe use PNPN instead of your
Maybe use what?
PNPN.
What is it? Okay, what is date of birth? Okay, let me look at the form first. Why is it already red? Text field, and we have date picker. Okay, what is the version? The version of React Hook form is 7, all right. Input variant outlined, you pass in the field. All right. So with date picker, I believe you actually will have to use the controller. Okay, we boom, select the date. Where are you from? Russia. Submit. Age is required field. Yeah, I think it doesn't recognize it properly. You know what I think happens is that React Hook form relies on refs to read the value from the components. If the component doesn't have the ref property, then it won't work. And we can check it by passing in a ref function. I forgot that it's not Vim. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break your code a little bit further and pass in the ref manually. I'm going to pass in a function that is going to log the value that ref is passing to it. So log ref. Here I'm going to log a bunch of dashes and then ref. Save. Probably reload. I think what we're going to see here is that date picker doesn't actually have the ref property. My theory, but I'm fairly confident in that. So let's open the console. We should already see the Okay, the ref wasn't even called. And to prove my point that it should have been called if it would accept the ref property, let's do it with one of my things here as well. So inside of the app, let's create another input. Just temporarily. Input, name, whatever. Ref equals. And then here I'm going to pass a function that will log the ref object that I'm going to receive from this input. And I'm also going to add a bunch of dashes so we can see that it's this console log. Let's receive the ref from the arguments, go to the browser, open the React application, boom, see what happens? This is what is supposed to happen. If it doesn't happen, it means that the component doesn't actually pass the ref anywhere, and it's not supposed to work with it. So what you should do in this case, I just thought for a second that I'm not sharing my screen and I'm just gonna look stupid. Okay, so what you should use instead is use the controller. This is specifically for the components that cannot be controlled using ref. Read it up, and instead of like what you did there, I tried to, like, this is what I tried to do first. Like, this is the first thing I would try. I would hope that please React hook form work with this component like you do with others using the register. Sometimes it cannot because the component doesn't accept the ref, doesn't support the ref. In this case, you want to wrap it into the controller and then manually pass the onBlur, onChange, and checked. OnBlur and change and value, which for some inputs like checkboxes, it will be checked, but you got the idea. So instead of passing the ref and then it's going to be handled automatically, instead of it, you get the handling functions onBlur, onChange, and the value from the controller, and you pass it to the checkbox. Not necessarily checkbox. In your case, it's going to be date picker, but you got the idea, right? At least I hope so, that it's clear now why it doesn't work. One more question: how to make my CSS scoped? You use CSS modules. Yeah, I guess that's it. CSS modules. It's supported by React Create React App by default. They have it in their documentation. It's quite easy to enable. You just call the filename.module.css, and then you import it a little bit differently. You will have to use named imports from your... if I remember correctly, let's actually look it up. Create React App, CSS modules, boom. Adding a CSS module style sheet. So yeah, you name it with module in the name, and then inside of the component, what you do is you import the object, and then you actually, I think you can destructure it, and then you can use the class names as this object property. So for example, they had error defined as a class, and then it's available in the styles object as the error field that they pass as a class name. This class name will actually be this class name will be automatically generated. It will have a hash number that will make it, it will allow, make it uniquely associated with this specific component. So it's not going to be globally available, not going to end up in global scope. Hope it helps. So it's CSS modules. Without CSS modules, I hate it. No, use CSS and JS. And also, why do you hate it? What's the problem? I want to use regular CSS, but make it scoped. Well, I think you're making more like why? Is it like what? Why? I don't understand. Sorry. CSS modules are invented specifically to fix the scoping problem. Okay, there is actually, you know what? There is a solution. you can fix it. You can fix it by naming CSS in a very specific way. Like Yandex, Russian company, they invented the BEM methodology, block element modifier. You can read it up as well. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to share my screen and show you the block element modifier. I don't think it's a good idea to use it, but as you want to avoid scope problems with CSS and don't want to use CSS modules, well, here is an option for you, which I probably do not recommend. BEM, Yandex, CSS. Here you go. So it actually is both a naming convention and a set of tools. Okay, this looks horrible. Is there some better website? I think they used to have. Okay, this is impossible to read. Okay, there is an article on CSS tricks, also good. So, for example, you have a component that is going to be your block level element button. If it has another element inside of it, it's going to be an element of this block. So, button that has price is going to have another style assigned to it, button price. If button has something else, it's going to be button beige. And you use dash dash or underscore underscore to symbolize that it's an element of the button block. If the button has modifiers like green button, orange button, big button, small button, grayed out button, disabled button, or something else, you use different syntax. And here they use underscore and dash to show that this one is an element of button and this one is a modifier of a button. When we used to work to use the BEM methodology at work, we used a little bit different syntax. We used double dash to specify the element and single underscore to specify the modifier. I don't think it matters. You just need to have some convention. So you can use this convention called BEM to avoid scope issues in your code if you don't want to use CSS modules. Okay, BEM, I know. Okay. But I like, okay. So Flatline already recommended to Funny Family to use styled components, and Funny Family says that you like to use separate styles, something CSS. And I think nothing stops you from doing it when you use styled components. You can do this. It's about organization, not about the technology that you're using. So, we have an interesting question. Forming or React Hook form. Doesn't matter, but I prefer React Hook form just because I worked with it more. So I do not recommend one or another. I can just teach React Hook form better because I used it more. But okay, I think it's enough to work with. Sorry, I talked myself into some confusion. What I mean is that enough looking at the comments. I'm gonna go to live coding, back to live coding. Okay, is my example working even? Let me clean it up. I was showing some stuff. I don't need this input showing how the ref works. All right. Let's clean up the console. We have the default title. I'm gonna copy it to the Facebook value, and then I copy it to the YouTube value. Boom, that works. One more thing that I would like to show is how to conditionally show and hide form elements. And I believe it should be fairly simple. Let's try to do this. I'm gonna have another value. I'm gonna have a checkbox. Input type checkbox. And what's cool about React Hook form is that checkboxes and radio buttons and groups of those elements are supported quite neatly. It's very nice how React Hook form supports them. So we call register and we call it show YouTube title. Done. And then here I'm gonna say if, and here we're gonna use the watch thing again. const show YouTube title equals watch show YouTube title. Now I'm gonna check show YouTube title and end. And if it's true, we're gonna show the YouTube input. Okay, what is wrong? I don't see the syntax error. Okay. What is wrong? Okay. Form has no corresponding closing tag. Button. Okay, this thing needs to have the closing thing. Yeah, that was the problem. Now I can copy this thing, format the document. No, again, something wrong. Okay. Now it should be good. Format the document. All right, and now we have conditional. How do you call this conditional in the layout? I don't know. I'm just using the AND operator. So if we have the show YouTube title true, then we will show the populatable input for YouTube. I think we might have some issue copying the values to it. Let's try it out. I will copy it to Facebook. Okay, nothing works now. Glorious. Why it happens so? And it can be copied here. Okay, I was not clicking properly. That's interesting. So I borked it completely. I feel that doing a nested form from React form is quite tricky. Yes, I also think so. So if you have any ideas for the nested forms, I think that would be quite cool. Okay, I guess I'm already a bit tired. I'm gonna share the code that we wrote today. I'm gonna do it right now and add it to the video description. And I'm gonna answer a bunch of questions. So let's chat in Discord if you're still there. Is anyone still there? Let's chat a little bit. And I'm gonna add the link to the description. And we're gonna wrap up soonish.
Hello.
Hello. I'm committing the code and adding it to the video description. I wanted to share an interesting article. Give me a couple of seconds. I wanted to talk about the file permissions in Linux, and I found a genius article that explains how to remember the you know that there is mnemonic like RWX, which is read, write, and execute for the user, for the group, and for the root user, I guess. And you can also specify these values using the numeric codes. So I'm going to commit the changes, and then we're going to discuss this thing, because I think it's something that is kind of notoriously hard to remember, but I found an article that shows you an easy way to remember this. Sorry?
Yeah, that's the reason we use chmod x+x. or executable files, the user group.
Plus
And
X.
running bash file.
I think plus X by default is for the user. Yeah, exactly. Not for the group.
Yeah, when we are running sh file, we need to run chmod plus X.
Yep. I'm creating a new repo, gh repo, create. Yes, add an origin. Git push u origin. I guess it's master here. Okay. Boom. Gh repo view. Oh. Web. Okay. Now it looks a bit silly that I'm not sharing my screen, but I'm not doing anything code related. What I'm doing now is adding the video to the adding the code to the video description. Oh my god, I got a delivery. Okay, sorry. Wait for me for a few seconds. I need to receive a delivery. Oh, all right. Thank you for waiting twice today. Oh, all right. Where do I put my keys? Okay. Let's go to YouTube. YouTube Studio. And now I add it to the video description. Content.
Hi, Maxim.
Hello.
I have two questions for today.
Yeah, go ahead. Shoot it.
Okay, so first question, using NPM versus Yarn. Some people say that it's better to use Yarn with React.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about it. And second question about Material UI. What is it used for, and should we use it? And are you using it?
First question about the NPM versus Yarn. My personal opinion, it doesn't matter. Use whatever you're mostly comfortable with. I usually use Yarn. I honestly don't have any good reason to do this. I don't know why would it be better for React specifically, because, for example, I have a bunch of students and several examples. For all my pet projects, I use Yarn. At work, I use NPM. I didn't find any differences, any meaningful differences, except for how you run your commands. So I think it's just unimportant. Choose whatever you feel more comfortable with. That's the first one. Another one is about material UI. And let's talk a little bit about this. Material UI. So it's a component library from, I guess, it's not from Google as I remember, because I thought it's from Google. Is it from Google? No, doesn't matter. It's a library of pre-made components that you combine to build your applications. Like let's open. Okay, let's press get started, and we'll have components, and it should show us the component list that it supports. For example, it has some basic primitives like a box or container that you use to build your layout. Also, it has a bunch of pre-styled components like, for example, breadcrumbs, some typical components that you might need in your application. So it can save you a bunch of hours, a bunch of time if you use it in your application. So here, for example, you see breadcrumbs to navigate through the levels, the hierarchy levels in your application. Problem that comes with that is that you need to learn Material UI, how it works, the UI language that they propose with their library. Should you use it? I don't know. I have a friend who used to use it at work at least. He said that they had a bunch of bugs, that Material UI had a bunch of bugs related to media queries. Like it wouldn't properly allow you to specify the styles, because you probably will want to style your elements for your application, unless you do some prototype. So they had some sort of problem with media queries. I can't be more specific because I just don't remember. Should you use it? I don't know. I would probably go with something more simple, because if you base on this... Okay, no, I have two thoughts about this. If I want to prototype something quickly, and I'm already familiar with this, yeah, I would probably move super fast and be able to build some UI fairly quickly. Will it be easy to support? Probably I would try to build my own solution and be less dependent on Material UI, because it's very complex. That's just some thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Yarn can install multiple packages at once, and NPM you have to do one at a time. That might be true. Thing is that how often do you need to install packages? Is it really that important? Because yeah, when you start new project, you probably install a bunch of them at once, and you need to do this. When you support a project and you work on it continuously, how often will you do it? Once, several months? I don't know. Depends on the stage of when you support it, but probably not very often.
Is it false statement?
This is what? Sorry, I didn't.
This is a false statement. You can install multiple packages with Yarn.
It's even false. Is the syntax the same as with Yarn? So if you say npm install
npmi, multiple packages. I'm pretty sure we can do that.
So yeah, you can do it.
I'm testing if you want. Yeah.
Let's actually test it. Yeah, let's install. I don't know. Do you have any ideas to what we can install in this project? PMI.
React. This project also.
Underscore _. This is silly because they're kind of competing. One is I forgot how to English. I'm quite tired, I think. npm _. Yeah, you see, it's not complaining, and it's probably going to install them, even though what I'm doing now is only to demonstrate that it's possible. You shouldn't do it in your project. So if you chose Yarn, always use Yarn. If you choose npm, always use npm, because what happens now is that we have two sources of truth, like what components, what versions of your packages did it resolve to. So for example, if you say install React, what it has to do, it has to install some specific version of React. And to make it consistent, it will write down in the log file, and it can be either package log or Yarn log, it will write down the specific version that it installed, and maybe a bunch of dependencies of the package that you've installed. All of them will end up in the log file. As it says, it's auto-generated. And what you need to make sure you have is that you have only one of those, either package log, and then you always use npm, or yarn log, and you always use yarn. I think that's the only important part. And then which one of them to use, yarn or npm, I don't think it matters, honestly. Okay.
Did you try the npm with multiple?
Yeah, I tried. It worked. I think I was sharing screen. I hope. Maybe I didn't.
You should use pnpm. It's for you that you have many folders and workspaces. pnpm is the best option for you, especially because your Mac is dying.
Wait, is it pnpm?
pnpm, yeah. pnpm.
Like this?
pnpm.
pnpm.
Yep.
It's a Shockley diode, or PNPM diode, is 4-layer PNPM, 2 terminals named PNPM. Hello from PNPM.io. PNPM.io, this is the website, right? Fast disk space efficient package manager.
Okay.
Do you think it's because I use a lot of projects?
Yeah, maybe you have, at least in your streams, you're creating 10 different Create React apps, and
I will explore it.
I think you have, hundreds of gigabytes of node modules, I think.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I will try it out. That's interesting. But yeah,
it cached the version of the package that you install. For example, React 17.0.2, you always install the latest, or Create React app, you mostly install the same packages, and it cached them right from this.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to share one more thing. And it is
Linux.
Yes, Linux permissions. It's marcs. I'm gonna Google. Am I sharing my screen? I think I do. J Marcius. Yes, I'm sharing. All good. So look at this. This is glorious. This is about reputation mining, whatever. Yeah, this one. Simple way to remember Linux permissions. So when we actually, I want to demonstrate. Where is my terminal? We have a bunch of files here. Let's see ls minus lh. It's gonna show us a list of files. H list is this list format, and H is this human readable form of the size of the files. This is not what is interesting to us right now. What is interesting is the permissions. On the left, the first column is the permissions for this file. So first one is the user. Wait a second. Is it root user group? User group other. So we see that the user that I have right now logged in on my machine is Maxim Ivanov. The group is staff. And if we read it user group and other, then this file, the Docker file, has read and write permission, but not execute permission for user, only read permission for the group, and only read permission for the staff. So it's groups of 3 blocks, 3 letters, RWX, RWX, and 3 times like this. The D in the beginning only means that this is a directory. That's it, nothing else. But to be able to change the access rights, so for example, you want to make it possible for everyone to edit your file, to write to it, or you want to make it possible to only read and execute but not write, or something else, you use the chmod command. Chmod types yes, and then you specify what should be done available. So for example, to make it executable, you write +x. To make it not executable, you write -x. But also you might want...
I was talking about this.
Exactly. But also sometimes you want to give a bunch of specific permissions to your users. So for example, you want to give one sort of permissions to your user, another sort of permission set for your group, and another sort of permission set for everyone else. And this is where you use chmod. Then you specify the numeric code, and not usually, it's always 3 numbers, like 6, 5, 2, whatever. What does it mean? How to remember this? This is actually quite genius. If we go back to the article and look at this table, it actually explains it already. So as I said, this writes string consists of 3 blocks of 3 letters: read, write, execute, R, W, X. And each of those letters has actually a corresponding masking number. So read is number 4, read, write is number 2, execute is 1. 4, 2, 1. So for example, if you want to give the read and write access to the group, then the first number should be read and write. 4 plus 2, 6. So it's 6. If you want to give only the read access to the group, then it's only going to be 4. And then if you want to give no access to the other, you can say, I suppose, 0. Because how it works is that you compose the numbers. Is it number composition? Subtraction and composition? No. How is it called in English? You probably got what I mean anyway. So for example, he gives here, what kind of writes does he give? 4 plus 2 is 6. So 6 means read and write. And 4, 4 means that he gives only write access. No, only read access to the group and the others. So the user here will be able to read and write, and 4, 4 means that the group and all other users will only be able to read the file .ext. We can test it here. So for example, let's touch a new file, test.txt, ls -lh. I think I can say test.txt, and yeah, and it's going to show us the writes for this file. So the user can already read and write, and the group can read, and all other users can read. If we say chmod, let's say 444, everyone should only be able to read this file after we run it, test.tsx, and then we read these values again. You will see that all of them are now read, read, read. If we say 4 plus 2 plus 1, which means to read, write, and execute, chmod 777 test.tsx, txt, and then we ls. It's now executable as well, which is a bit silly. rm test.txt. I think it's quite cool. For me, it's so good. Such a good mnemonic to remember how to do it. But yeah, that was off topic. I would like to wrap up with the stream now. Because yeah, we discussed a lot regarding React Hook form. 2 main changes there is that now we have to spread the execution result, the result of calling the register function in your component, and also that errors are now accessible from the form state object. Thanks everyone for coming to this stream. If join my Discord server if you have any ideas for next streams. Let's discuss them there. Also, you can join through the voice channel, and we can just talk like we did a couple of times today. Sorry for a bit of craziness today, me being late, me having to pick up the parcel. Yeah, some days are like that. Okay, have a nice day, have a nice week. See you next time.